So this is kind of my preliminary marks for make the cut. You'll notice I put the center lines in there vertical and horizontal so I can remember where the center of the axle should be after I cut that out. So I kind of marked off everywhere I'm going to cut, so I'll use the Dremel tool to grind all that out to get this to fit. I also went ahead and cut out the rear carriers, because these will still snap up from underneath and the differential will be mounted in the top housing, so the wheels will be separate from this. You can see I got the 3D printed sprockets done. They turned out really well. Kind of a glare on here. The light's too bright. But the 3D printed, they fit onto the differential, and then they got the cogs in there to attach to the tracks, and they fit really well. So now to start to mount this thing. So this differential fits in here perfectly. The center lines line up. Kind of my marks where I cut out worked out really well. I did have to trim a little bit more out for the bottom, for the kind of the bottom bowl or the bottom pig of that differential. So I trimmed a little bit more out there, but then as you can see, this kind of slides in, and where it sits in those squares is just almost just really good. I just can't complain about that. The other nice thing is this cover fits as well. I did have to trim out, let me just set that down. I trimmed out along here because that's where the top of that differential is. I trimmed out a little bit here and here. I have to do just a little bit of shaving right here, but it will actually, it's almost all of them snap in except for one, so I need to shave about 1/8 of an inch off of here. I initially thought I was going to have to cut out a large majority of that, and I don't have to, which is great. And actually, if you notice this almost thing here, that's where the differential would be on the real tractor. So that recess they made worked really well. I'll shave a little bit off here. I might poke through, I might not. If I do, I'll probably just fill it with some putty and then spray paint it black. So my next step is to actually mount this differential securely. So my initial thought is I'm going to 3D print some blocks that will glue here, and then I'll put a plate on the back and bolt it to it. And so once I kind of clamp that halfway tight, it'll stay pretty well centered. So, and you can kind of see luckily there's marks on this differential, so I know when I'm centered up or not. So, like I said, I'm going to design a couple blocks that I'll just glue right in here, and then I'll put a plate on the back and screw it in. Kind of all 3D printed parts and some screws. So, pretty happy with this. I did some playing earlier with the front housing, and that's how much I had to cut away to get the differential to set where I want it to do. You can kind of see it's kind of angled up a little bit. So with that being angled up, that actually points the drive shaft up where it needs to go. And then also with this, my drive shaft can hook on here and come up above, and this drive shaft is a pretty good length because my drop box is going to be just above this pin. So, you know, when this thing twists and turns, it needs to be a little bit of room here. So I will probably cut a majority of the whole of this out right here for that drive shaft to come through there. So I'll trim that out once the differential is mounted securely. So pretty happy with the way this rear drive's going. So I'll get to some drawings done in SketchUp and get some parts printed. You can see my printer's printing a third sprocket now. Like I said, I've got 2 done already. I was at Walmart tonight, so I picked up some equipment yellow. So there's yellow and green right side by side. It doesn't, you know, because of licensing, they don't say John Deere yellow, but it says like new equipment yellow, new equipment green, and it's these John Deere colors. So I paint these in white, and I'll paint them that same yellow to match. If the shade's off a little bit, I'm not worried about it too much. But again, I'm pretty happy with how these sprockets turned out. I gave it a little bit of shape on the inside, but these grooves just fit perfect. So it should have really good traction. And what's nice is because this is a limited slip differential, you know, it'll be able to make turns easy enough. You know, that a lot of that tractors I see with the 4-motor setups, they turn really hard because both these tracks are turning at the same rate. So when this thing turns, this will allow it to give a little bit. And I think this is going to turn really well. That's why I really wanted to use differentials. I'm going to have to do a lot of modifications to this engine housing, but it's going to work out just about perfect for the motor to set right above there. And again a drive shaft going down, because my drive shaft will come through right up here. So we'll see how that turns out. Well, moving on. Alright, so we're going to get finished up on the kind of the rear assembly. I went ahead and 3D printed some little braces that will basically glued on inside there. So we had the housing cut out that the differential sat pretty nicely. So I glued these in here, and then I 3D printed these like keepers that will hold the rear differential in place. So set it on top and screwed it in there, and then screwed in down there, and that's got that differential pretty well held in place. I went ahead and threw some green paint on the rear differential and these holders, and then the 3D printed sprockets, I went ahead and threw some paint on those and got that in here. So we're now ready to put this the track carrier in. If you remember, we kind of cut that out so it'll go up around there. So that should just go up in place and snap back in like original, which it does. And so now we'll throw some tracks on there. And this is the first time I'm doing it, so I might have egg on my face if it doesn't fit. Overall, that seems pretty good. So we'll throw a track on the other side. And that seems pretty good as well. So overall, I am very happy with the differential setup. I think that'll allow it to, you can kind of even start to see that. As I start to turn, this one turns faster and that one kind of stops because it is a limited slip differential, or the diff's not locked up. So I do have little caps I'll 3D print, and it'll pop into place to kind of cover up that nut to kind of give it a little more clean look. It'll kind of have like some bolts and stuff on it, like it's part of that gear reduction final. And drive shaft spins and turns. And so the last thing I have to do is open up this. I'm actually going to save that till the tractor is pretty well all put together. And I do have to do a little more grinding out here. I'll kind of just do that off the camera. But overall, this fits back into place pretty good. The diff's preventing it from it right now. But they're in there. Sprockets are in it. It's looking like it's working good. So, all right, moving on to the next thing. We'll set this off to the side. We'll start taking a look at the front housing. In a previous video, we talked about this is going to get cut out. This engine compartment's going to get cut out. The motor is going to go up in here, right up through there. The drop box is going to fit right here, and so the shaft will come off the back down to the rear diff. And then we're going to put the steering servo down on the bottom. And the idea is the servo is going to come out the bottom here. And I'm going to have this horn hooked here, and then we'll have two arms going to the rear assembly to turn it. So I will have to 3D print some little brackets that will attach here and here that the steering arm will get hooked to steer it. So going over what all I've got to cut. I actually just looked at a picture of a John Deere 9620RX this morning, and when the hood is closed, they have a small little piece of plastic here. When the hood's closed, you can't see the engine at all. So that makes me feel better about cutting all this out. I will just like 3D print a piece that'll go under here, so you won't see the differential nearly as obvious. You won't see the motor. But I do need to leave this here in kind of this front guide so that the hood still fits on and sits properly. But this engine compartment is going to get pretty well cut out. I need to have it all the way back to this point for that motor to fit. So this will get in the way of the motor, and definitely this will get in the way of the motor. So this will get cut out here, and I'll just take a little bit at a time as I'm placing the motor. For the differential, I kind of got it marked out where the axle or the housing is going to sit. So this will cut out here, as well as a line coming up there and up there. So that will get cut out, so that differential will sit right there. On top, I've done a little bit of playing. I kind of scratched out lines here. This is going to get cut out right there, and that's where the drop box will sit. These two holes will bolt the drop box to this housing. Actually, I don't need to cut out as much as I got marked out here, but I do need to open this up, and that's where the drive shaft will come out. And then on the bottom side, we got to cut this out here. Got to cut these two tabs out, and then I'm going to cut this out here. And I've 3D printed a mount for my steering servo. The servo will bolt to that mount. That mount will slide in there, and then we'll drill 2 holes, bolt this together. So these 2 housings will bolt together, or will snap together, and then we'll put bolts in here to hold the drop box, and bolts in here to hold the servo. And those 4 screws will kind of hold this back half together. And then once we get it together, I'll look at how I'm going to attach the motor and the differential in the front. Space is running out. I'll have to find some cavities to put the ESC and the battery and the receiver. So, but there is a bunch of extra cavities here that I think, like, the receiver could even fit right down in here. So before the final assembly, we'll find places for all the stuff. And again, it's still my goal to put lights in the cab. I think that was pretty much all the cutting to do. So that's what we're going to do cutting wise. I've already got the other housing done. So here I got this engine cut out. Obviously it's got to get some cleanup. And the differential set basically right in there. And so again, I'm going to 3D print a cover the hood here, so when the hood's closed, you're not going to see all this. Here's where the drop box is going to go. I had to, again, clean some of that, cut some of that out. And then I got 2 holes drilled that this will screw that housing together. And I got this opened up here for that motor to come through. So that motor fits inside there. Gotta get these wires down. But no, it fits, and I got clearance on everything to hook. My issue is going to be trying to find a small enough drive shaft to go from here to here, and then I'll have the differential down here, and I'll need a drive shaft to go from here down to the differential. So that will be a bit of a challenge. Like if I set this in here as well, it is certainly a tight fit, but they both do fit in there. Now finding the drive shafts, that's going to be the next challenge. So as I set those aside, and here you can see the steering servo. Again, 3D printed a little kind of spacer block that the servo screwed to, then that slides into place, and then screwed this mount into there. So then I'll set this on the back here, and again we'll have arms going to that rear for steering. So my steering will be underneath. And so the next step is to actually go ahead and cut the other half of the housing out and start to look at mounting the motor, the axle, and then some drive shafts. I went to my local hobby shop yesterday and picked up some miscellaneous drive shaft parts, so we'll take a look at that. This metal one I had from previous. Actually, I got to cut this tube down because it's a little too long as well. And this rear step on the back, I'm going to have to cut it off. I'm going to be very careful cutting it off. I'm going to cut it off with the X-Acto knife, and I'm hoping to glue it back on just a little higher. I don't want to get rid of that rear step. Excuse me. But it is currently in the way, so this angle needs to be up about right there. You'll notice I cut that hole up wide because that needs to be able to have room for when it steers. So it can't just be a straight hole when it steers. We gotta have room for that. So I'm gonna mount this motor and stuff off camera, and we'll go from there. All right, I'm just very excited how this is turning out. Got the both differentials mounted. Got the motor placed in there. I got the drop box mounted, as well as I got the steer servo mounted. So we can see the steer servo underneath here. Like I said, I'm gonna use this one horn and then run rods back to here to turn it left or right. So that'll be my next project, getting the steering hooked up, but I kind of want to give an overview of what we've done so far. Like the last section, we cut all the parts out. Most of the clips are still in here that hold the two halves together, and this still comes apart in two halves. So if you undo these clips, this comes out. However, the drop box is screwed in place, so any weakening of metal or any weakening of the body by cutting stuff out will be strengthened by bolting these two halves together with the drop box, as well as the steer servo. I had bolted the servo to a 3D printed bracket, and then that's screwed in there as well, so that will also help strengthen this down here. And so just tested out for the first time, kind of excited about this. What's interesting is been pondering here over the last little bit of how I'm going to make a bracket to hold the differential and the motor. However, as I'm cutting the plastic out to make it fit, take a little bit out, see if it fits, take a little bit more out, see if it fits. I got it in there. When I snap this together, those things are not moving. On the bottom differential, they're cut out so it's set in place this way, and they're just not moving. This motor is not. I can twist it a little bit, but under a lot of pressure. I don't think I'm going to make a mount. I think I cut it and rounded that off enough. I'll probably put some hot glue in some spots to keep it from twisting or keep things from touching a little bit, sort of as like a cushion that'll set in, almost like a cradle. So when it snaps together, it's in the one spot. So I'll put some hot glue in just to make some, like I said, cushions for that stuff, so that it remains seated. But I'm not going to build any special brackets. As that snaps together, it holds everything in place. Very excited about that. With this drive shaft on the back, I did have to cut the step off the back. The step was interfering with that drive shaft, but as you can see, this turns and it still pivots. So let me show you how I'll test out a little bit. Put a block under there and a block here. And I just have, right now I haven't got any electronics wired, so I just have this hooked up to a power supply at 3 volts. And when I turn it on, everything runs. I can basically twist it left to right, kind of pivot a little bit, and all the drive shafts are working just as expected. When I ordered these differentials online, and I'll leave a link in the description of where I got them, I also got this drive shaft. It was kind of in that one of those people who bought this also bought this drive shaft. But I didn't buy a bunch of them. I just bought the one at the one time, you know, had it on here. And so when I was at my hobby shop yesterday, I found some Traxxas drive shafts, and I'll post those as well. But it's Traxxas 7057 and a Traxxas 7056. These are kind of short. I did have to trim them up a little bit. These weren't made for this motor differential combo, so I did have to drill what would be the main pilot out. So I had to drill it out a little bit, and then I cut these to length. And I did have to trim up my drop box and my motor because the shafts were sticking out too far compared to the hole to align it up. So I took my Dremel and just ground about a 1/16 of an inch off the shafts on those. But these drive shafts fit in there well. Again, I'm just kind of excited about this. So I really wanted to see making differentials work. And just look at that differential. It's just cool. Now, granted, I did a poor job painting it. But the back half, I did get some paint on the differential. I got the paint on the drive wheels. This thing all spins well, and you can see it's a real differential. So as one locks up, that locks up, but it can sit and spin. Obviously, I don't have electronics hooked up, so I just hook the motor up. You can kind of see it drive. So and it'll climb over stuff. I'm really happy with that. This looks kind of bad, but actually once you put the hood back on, I'll just pop this in place there. It fits in there well. Like I said, I'm gonna make some type of plate printed up here to kind of hide that. I'll get these sprockets painted yellow. I'll get the differential painted green, so when you see that sticking out there, and I'll get some type of plate to cover that. But overall, I'm really happy. So the next step will be finishing the steering and then getting electronics in this thing to actually drive it remotely. In talking about that, it does look like I have space under the motor in front of this differential. I can put the ESC, so I'm going to mount the ESC right down there. The receiver will fit kind of in here. I got underneath the drive shafts, I got some space down above the steering servo. So I'm going to put the receiver up in there, and then I've not determined exactly where I'm going to put the battery yet. I actually am thinking about doing 2 batteries that are thinner and trying to fit down in here. So I haven't yet determined that. I also could get a decent size 2S battery and fit underneath the hood here. There's still some room there. You know, I could even make a battery mount and mount it right on the front here. I'm not too worried about the grill. I don't care really what this looks like once the hood's opened up. All I care about is when the hood's closed, does it look right? So realistically, I could fit a decent sized battery right in the front there, and I may do that. I haven't determined that yet. I want to get all the electronics in, then we'll decide that. But this is a great stopping point for this part of this video. Like I said, the next video we'll get the servos, the steering, and the electronics in the off. I'll paint this stuff, but just really excited how this is turning out. I've seen a couple of these conversion videos where they talk about doing differentials and then they switch to 4 motors. I just didn't want to do that. I love the look of these differentials and drop boxes, and yeah, kind of a 3-to-1 reducer on the front of this motor to get it more power and keep it slowed down some. So, all right, that's into this video, and check out the next one for the next step of the Bruder John Deere 9620 RX conversion. Have a good day, you guys. Button up some of the electronics, placing stuff away, go over how we got the steering accomplished, and we'll start to put this thing back together and go over some of the few cleanups before we get to the final video of like LEDs and actually going out and running it. So in the last video I mentioned that the motor and the axle just fit really well. When it's all together, it didn't move. I did go ahead, and the motor actually has, well, this is a 3-to-1 reduction gear, and it has 4 mounting holes on the front. I went ahead and drilled a hole in the front of this and screwed one to it, so that the motor doesn't have any rotational issue. Even though it's not moving left or right, up and down, it still could spin. So by putting that one bolt in there, that will prevent that from spinning. The ESC I got mounted down, actually just kind of sitting in there. It fits kind of fairly snug. I just kind of sitting down there, and then these wires will route right down the front. I went ahead and popped a little hole in. The battery lead, I'm going to try to find a battery to put up the front here underneath the hood. So I'm going to route the battery lead right out the front. And then I went and used my Dremel and cut a small hole here. And this, I think it's a Horizon Hobbies ESC, actually comes with a, just to verify for sure. Yeah, so Horizon Hobby, it's a 60 amp ESC. It actually comes with a on-off switch right on it. And so I separated the on-off switch and ground out a small hole so that you can have a switch for turning this on and off. And so I just kind of super glued it right down inside there. So fit pretty good. I had to trim it up a little bit. You'll notice when you're doing conversions, there's always trimming to do. And so then the wire that runs the receiver, I'm going to route over the differential. And then in this, basically in this right-hand cowl, I'm going to put the receiver. I'm not actually going to mount it. I'm just kind of going to set it down there and hook the wires up to it. So if I have to get to the receiver, I can take the cab off and I can get to it all right. So I did Dremel out a hole down in there to get the wire from this inner housing to this outer housing. So that's just pulled up there. And then the steering servo is actually on the other half currently, and it'll just get fed to that hole. So both wires will come up here. I do have a plan to put a third lead, go and hook to the receiver and route through the tractor to come out the back. So if you wanted to hook up some type of implement control, or if you had a servo on whatever implement you're pulling, we're going to have a lead out the back, sort of like your remotes on a tractor, to run an implement. So I thought I had some here, but I actually used up my leads on one of my last projects. So in the end, I will route the cable out where the drive shaft is. I made these holes a little extra large, so I'll just route it out there. And I don't know, I may pop its own independent hole so it doesn't get caught up in the drive shaft. But there's plenty of places to route the wire from the receiver out the back. So I also mentioned I did pour some hot glue around where the differential sits. I actually just kind of globbed it in there, put the differential in place, and held it upside down so that glue kind of made a soft cushion around there. That should prevent any rattling of the differential. Again, the plastic held it really close, held it really tight, but that's just kind of a little safety aspect. Not even safety, just kind of little cleanup aspect. So I do got to trim some hot glue off the outside here. And then I did the same thing on this half. Poured a bunch of hot glue in there, put the differential where I wanted it, and go. So now we're going to put these two halves together. And off camera I went ahead and painted the differential. I really like these metal differentials. Like I said, I do get them on eBay. They're about $50. Not the least expensive one out there, but the look of them is just too cool with all the bolts and metal housing. That's what we've got in the front and the back. So putting this thing together, obviously here's your drain tubes. That's one that needs to be on bottom, so I'll go and kind of set this in here and get it basically where it needs to go. And then when we put these two halves together, actually what I find is easier is hook the differential up and then put the housings together. So I'm going to take these screws out of this half of the differential. And when you're doing projects like this, you're always going to need all kinds of miscellaneous screws, whether it's like a plastic screw or a machine screw. You just need a selection. Go to your local hobby shop and pick up selections of screws and all kinds of miscellaneous stuff, tie rods. So slide that out. And now with the motor and the differential here, I'll line these up. Then I'll line this up. Okay, and then once those are lined up, I will slide this into place. Oh, my differential's falling out. Oh, this top motor one's not going together very well. There we go. Oh, actually, now that before the motor is being pushed back a little bit, so now that I screwed that in, this is just a little too long, so I need to shorten up this shaft a little bit. So we'll just do that real quick. We'll slide this back out, and this just needs filed down. So it's actually going to be easiest to just take this off the motor. You'll obviously hear my 3D printers running in the background. If you guys haven't caught on yet, if you do conversions, RC conversions, you got to have 3D printers. They are just so stinking handy for let your imagination run wild. Anything you want to make, it seems like you can make on those. If you haven't heard before, I use the Creality Ender 3s. I have an Ender 3 Pro and a regular Ender 3. I do prefer my Pro over my normal Ender 3. It always just seems like it has a little bit better print quality. They're basically the same thing, but yeah, I've always had better success with my Pro's print quality. Kind of want to get one of those Ender 3 V2s. There's a couple features in those I like. So I run 2 about all the time. These are numbers 3 and 4 for 3D printers. Oh yeah, that fits well. Okay, so now that differential slid in, I'll line up the holes. I'll go and put my screws in. Alright, so like I said, the motor's pretty well mounted in. The differential will just kind of sit there. So now that I got that, I'm going to put these 2 halves together. So I'll go ahead and take my steering servo wire and feed it through there. While I got it, I'll take a couple of my tweezers and pull it out. I'd rather have the excess out here than flopping around down where there's drive shafts. So now that that's pulled out, I'm just going to slowly put this together. Put it together, pull some wires, make sure it's tight. Grab my differential, get my wires pushed in. We don't need to rush this. We kind of want to make sure everything goes together right without binding anywhere. Don't want to pinch any wires. Oh, I see my first problem. Where I'm putting my motor, yeah, it still might clear. So I'm going to keep squeezing this together. We'll see. That's going together all right. Again, make sure we're not pinching anything as we're coming through here. And we're almost to the point where we're going to start clipping. So we got a clip here, clip there. Let's get this back end in. Clip there, we hear the snap there. Oop, got that snap down there. And push that together a little more. Now these next 2 holes are lined up, so I'm going to get those in. I'm going to loosen these up a little bit because there's some play in those holes. So now that those are lined up, I'm fortunate, these little M3 screws I have tons of. This kit I use at work comes with 4 in every one, and I don't use hardly a 5% of them, so I bring them home for our seeds. Okay, so that's held together well. We haven't got this top one snapped together yet, so I'm sure that's just a matter of clip. And then this one gets snapped together here. Snap together there, snap together there. Said, pull these wires out, make sure they're not going to get in the way of the drive shafts down there. We can see that wire coming forward. Not that big of a deal. Everything's pretty tight there. Everything looks good there. Now I'll go and put the screws in on the bottom for the steering servo. These are small. These are just a like a wood screw, sheet metal screw, number 4 by 3/8. I keep boxes of those things. You never know when you need that. I just pick those up at the local hardware store. screw in here. And we got one more there. We can see the steering servo on bottom. If I was real particular, I might paint that. I'd probably rather not. You're not going to see it anyways. So these wires feel good. They don't feel pinched at all. All right, so now let's go ahead and put the drive wheels on. Oh, actually they're over on the paint booth. Let me pause for 1 second. So if you haven't heard me say it already, really like how these turned out. I could add a little bit more detail if I wanted, but got the little knobs in there so they catch in the track just really well. So really happy with how those turned out. I'll get the STL files posted to Thingiverse, and I'll leave a link in the first one. So let's get that on. Like I said, I haven't made them yet, but I need to make small caps that will go over those to hide that hole. I'll make a cap that'll cover that whole thing, kind of make it look like bolts or bolting something on. So, put my pin in. I'm using like the standard hex hub that'd be on like a Tamiya rear end. Tamiya. Potato, however it's pronounced. Put that on. Now that that's on, we can snap the carrier in. So if this was, you know, not completely supported before, by putting this carrier in will help support it. So let's snap that into place. That's into place, and there we go. So now we'll throw the tracks on. Got to get the tread pointed in the right direction. Not that it matters, just for looks. Oh my goodness, I need to do this with 2 hands. I'm trying to do it one-handed. Oh, the last time I put this on, I didn't have this housing on here. I have this housing on now, and it's making it a little difficult. Not impossible, just a little more difficult. There we go. That's on that side. Let's go ahead and throw the track on this side. There we go. Track on that side. Now it's kind of locked up because it's actually hooked to the motor. Now if I pick this up, I feel that floating free. So now let's connect part A to part B. You'll notice I've already got the steering linkage kind of put together. You might have saw that in the last video of it steering. Ultimately I just used, bought a pack of tie rod. These are size 256 tie rod, equivalent to about a 2 or 3 millimeter. And the horn off of the servo. Cut these about 3 inches long, and then just drilled 2 holes in here and bolted them to this half. So you can see down at the bottom there are the nuts in there coming up in there. Might be a little hard to see because of the dark. And got them hooked to that. So let's start to put this together. So part A meets part B. And we've got to be hooking the drive shaft up while we do that. Okay, shaft's coming in. Now I'll flip this over, and I'll put this retaining pin back in. And then with that retaining pin in, I'll put that on the servo, kind of twist a little bit to see where it fits. There we go. So now we can see how that's hooked up, and then just spinning the servo steers the tractor. So you also notice this can still kind of articulate those. Well, here's the package I got. Deere 256 swivel ball length. Comes with the rod end, the spacer, nut, bolt. It's a pack of 12 of them. You can see the price about $23. Those are things I just kind of keep on hand. I'm always using stuff like that. Let me go and put this screw in. And now there's it mated together. Again, we got the leads coming up for the receiver. I got the switch down here I can turn on and off. Let's go ahead and plug this receiver in. Let's see which one's which. I think this looks like the steering. So I'll plug that in 1. I believe it's 1. Could be wrong. I'll plug this one into 2. And that'll sit down there. Let me grab a battery. This battery won't fit. I will have to get a smaller battery to fit under the hood, so I'll do some looking around online to find the battery. So that won't be in the description. Once I find the battery, I'll go and do it. Being here, the switch that turns this on and off. So we'll turn it on. Let me get my receiver turned on. And so now, steer right, steer left. That's working well. Move some of this stuff out of the way. Oh, that battery back up there. And then forward control, reverse. So really happy with the way this is coming out. I might need to throw the cab on here just to get some good looks. But like I said, this I'm just going to stuff down here. Let me turn this around. Okay, so I'll stuff these antenna wires down there. That's really its own cavity. It's not going to get anywhere else. So I'll stuff that down there. You know, I'm not worried about zip tying those up because the cab will hold all that down there. So it's all down there like that. And then here goes the cab on top. That'll need to get squeezed together. And as of right now, I have the interior out because I got to see what's going to fit where. So obviously this battery doesn't fit underneath there. You know, if we start to give this, it's looking pretty cool. And I got to cut out now that I see this, I can cut out where that's going. So I need to cut this part out, and I'll need to find a smaller battery. So that's about it for this video. In my next video, I will hopefully have a battery by then, and I'll get this back part cut out, and we'll go over lights. The goal for the lights is to, I really want to put lights in these four up here. I'm definitely putting lights in the hood. Bruder did a great job with these clear lenses. I'm going to put some micro LEDs behind there, so we'll have lights in here. I don't think I'm going to do lights in the back of the cab. We'll see. We'll see how rambunctious I get. And I kind of would like to do some blinking strobes. If you just watch my D11 video, I've got just a flashing LED. So I popped those off, cut them out, put that flashing LED up there, hot glued it in, and then ran the wires back. So yeah, we'll see what I'm going to do on that. But the next video will be lights and buttoning this thing all up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this so far, part whatever we're on none of these have made the editing floor yet, so we'll see. And we'll have one more video to finish this up. But so far, man, ooh, it's strong, it's powerful. Like I said, just got to find a battery, and this thing is coming along well. You guys have a good evening.